Hi, everyone. This is Rich Berliner from CDIA, the Connected Digital Infrastructure Association. Today, I'm here with one of my favorite people, Dan Leaf from Googly. And Dan, we've known each other for a while through your previous incarnation at a company called Leaf Communications. But now you've got this thing that I think you've got a tiger by the tail here. So tell us about Googly. Tell us about your path to getting here and what's going on at Googly right now.
Yeah, so Googly is a hardware and software manufacturing company. So we're focused on taking what I've learned, gosh, for years, being Leaf Communications and servicing this industry and public safety, and really figure out how to bring and protect this invisible infrastructure that's inside these buildings. That's been a pretty heavy focus for a lot of us over the last probably 10 or 15 years, some a little bit longer. But Googly's focus is to take these systems that are deployed and bring some innovation to it and really try to drive awareness around these systems that, in our opinion, are often forgotten about once they're signed off and deployed. And when you look at critical fire life safety systems, there's a caveat to each one of those that they need to be on, they need to maintain, and they're deployed for a reason. So what Googly is really focused on and has been deploying and working with a lot of jurisdiction is really getting the awareness out there, the hardware and software deployed, and proving that value that these systems for a little bit up front can manage these systems a lot cheaper than they are today, and then bring reliability up to 24/7 versus this annual compliance that maybe is happening across the country.
So, as a communications guy, I can't tell you how many times I went into buildings and they didn't realize that some of their amplifiers weren't working. Many of the antennas that had been put up years before weren't working. A piece of fiber optic cable had a nail through it. Is that the kind of thing that you're bringing people's attention to? And is it just public safety focused, or is this something for the enterprise clients too?
Right now, we're focused on public safety. That doesn't keep us away from that space. I mean, the reality is today, life safety systems are largely reactive and manual. And so buildings get inspected once or twice a year. They get filed. Everyone seems they're working. So our main focus as we go to market is the public safety sector. At the same time, responsibility, we see that's fragmented, so we can also help some of the HJs and some licensee holders and property owners remove some of the liability. But our bigger vision, as we look at it, is public safety, or the IRCs, as a lot of call it, isn't just that frequency band. It's over the cellular operator side. It's over these commercial DAS or private radio systems that are deployed. And so there's value in understanding that what's the mechanism that these are deployed and used, and is there value to make sure these are on air. A lot of our pilots and deployments we have today range from 90-second pulse to make sure every 90 seconds or a minute and a half these systems are on, all the way to some commercial offices that just want to know in the morning when everybody gets there that those systems are functioning. But ultimately, we see a greater focus on a lot of the critical infrastructure deployed, CBRS, commercial operators, private UHF, VHF, maybe serving security or even in dams and tunnels. There still needs to be a reason those are on. They're deployed for a reason. So making sure communications is out is kind of where we base of our focus and fill that gap.
Gotcha. So one of the interesting things that I think that, is an issue nowadays is people are stealing a lot of copper from these things. And I'm sure that a good portion of what you're working on is, fiber-based, fiber backbone. But there is a copper element to this at some point too. And, if there's a theft of some of the equipment here, it's really important that somebody know it, somebody react to it. And is that sort of a focus of yours, that people in buildings, whether it's public safety folks or whomever, need to be aware of these things so they can go fix them and make sure that things are up to par?
Yeah, it allows you that window into seeing that these systems maybe are taken down for that reason or for whatever reason. There's no system today that really continuously monitors, validates, and communicates the health of these systems for any of the stakeholders. So we're trying to remove that guesswork and the delays and the human dependency and try to make it more automated and real-time intelligence. And I think that portrays into any reason these systems would go down, whether the copper's pulled out, the line severed, antenna that's serving that public safety frequencies off azimuth 20 degrees. Traditionally, they've always been at the fire panel. Well, it monitors anywhere from five to maybe 9 points of alarm. Any of the things that I just mentioned cannot be detected at the fire panel. And so that's the message we're pushing, is we should see this all the way to the end, because that's where it's tested at and used. And that's what we're focused on with our bigger vision.
Right. So I follow you on your LinkedIn posts, and I've seen a number of things that you're working on with different jurisdictions. You want to tell us about the New York one? Because that sounds like a really exciting one. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and how it reacts, excuse me, how it reflects on the entire company overall.
Yeah, absolutely. New York's been fun. It's been a long work in progress. We're focused on the 27 mandate that will be coming out. A lot of work is done up to that point. New York doesn't follow the same NFPA
Right.
72 code that most of the nation does. And so what New York's done is looked at their uh, communication systems and how they're deployed and how they're depended on. It's a little bit different than what's deployed across the US. So what's been brilliant and seeing that New York sees it and understands it is making sure these systems are monitored to the edge and not using your traditional Viswar tactics, but really seeing what's my integrity all the way to the edge, and that will translate to coverage and not changing sense acceptance. They've taken it a step further now, and what we're doing is every building is going to have a failover. So you're going to have a local on-premise be able to see anything that's happening when it's digitally displayed. So if a fireman walks in, maintenance technician from a contractor walks in, they can visually see if that building's on. And if there's any floors that have coverage issues, you can click on that floor, the tray pops out digitally, and you can really quickly see maybe where those gaps are. The beautiful thing about that, in my opinion, is for two reasons. One, fireman shows up, ISP's been cut. You still have on-premise visibility to what's happening to that network. They're safe. The
Yeah.
other side is with the maintenance efficiencies. So the contractor gets notification, 35th floor, antenna number 1202. They can click on it instantly, see right where that's at, and within minutes be at that problem versus taking hours. So New York has been very forward thinking with this. And so, as we develop and evolve into their central station, Googly IQ is going to be deployed to where we're now monitoring inside of each of these buildings and translating those alarms, whether it's an alarm going to the F2NY knock or it's heading over to the maintenance technician. But the point of I'm trying to drive is, that's giving automated vision into these systems without any reactive by the fire department or the technician itself. They're getting that alert to their device.
And as you said, by the nature of the difference in what New York does, that rather than what the rest of the country does, this is a natural for that because you really have to do it in a different sort of way than the rest of the world is doing. So that seems like a very natural piece. I've also seen a bunch of global deals that you've been working on, besides just this stuff in the U.S., which I don't know how you do it, frankly. I just, I don't know how there are enough hours in the day to do what you're doing. But are there global deals that you're willing to talk about right now that can be discussed?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sleeping a lot on an airplane. That's the trick. But it's been good. We've been fortunate to be able to to get the vision and the messaging at a very high level, and that's getting picked up at the country and sometimes the city or the state level. And so when we started looking abroad, some of our patents took us to different markets. So we all are surrounded by public safety in the US, but that's globally. But as maybe the UK or Europe or maybe even the UAE look at it, it's a different purpose of what they want to look for. So when we look at the UK, they have smoke vents that are going to push the smoke out of these stairwells for multifamily people to get out. A little bit different than how US looks at it, but they have to have that mechanism to monitor that pull. You look at the UAE, they're very interested in pilots are being deployed to measure the temperature. They have a problem with high-rise fires. If those break out, the structural damage. So we're taking a little bit of what we've done in New York and some other parts across the country and deploying it in Dubai to where we can now see a flame or a temperature change 7 minutes faster than a smoke detector. But the beautiful thing about it is we can also give a location base on that floor on the Z axis. So now they can have a little bit more insight and intel to go tackle whatever incident might be happening, whether it's a fire. And so we're pushing from a fire life safety, but also from a property loss prevention in the UAE. So Australia was at the IWC recently. Canada's looking at it from their minds. Everybody's starting to see the awareness of communication and the reliability and the necessary need for it. And they're starting to realize these systems do fail, and they don't fail at the active component level. They might fail at a TI in a building. Someone might knock an antenna off azimuth, or someone severs an entire coax line because they don't know where it goes, and they're doing some improvements. Either way, the message is pretty clear from what we engage with, and that is give us that connectivity and that insight to the edge of the networks to where we can proactively be ready to do anything to it if necessary.
So you started down the path talking a little bit about annual compliance and how important that is. CDIA, as part of what we're doing as a membership organization, we're working on advocacy. And I think that's an area that we could really help with in terms of advocating to make sure that there are annual inspections and it's not necessarily something that one jurisdiction does and 10 others don't, like you mentioned with San Diego. So I think that's an area we can help. But how important is that kind of piece of the equation for you?
Very important. So I think everybody would agree that this space is very fragmented. You have different jurisdictions adopting certain parts of the code. Some are enforcing, some aren't. But the bottom line is these codes are meant for a reason and they're being deployed. And so when you look at the annual compliance piece, whether a jurisdiction isn't enforcing that annual inspection, it's still the responsibility of the property to maintain it. You're asking a young property manager to maintain a system they have no idea about.
Right.
But that once a year piece, they're coming in and telling there's failure. So we see it a bigger vision. Right now, the message should be let's get those annual inspections, as the code says, across the country. Once we get into that, they're going to see the resource constraint and the inconsistencies that happen when you do those inspections to where now, why aren't these things manually or automatically monitored? So we're doing some things with the front end. We have some software we've created on the AI and blockchain that's allowing these reviews at the AI level to review permits to make sure they're code specific, but there's no gray areas, and still allowing the permit reviewer to bless it ultimately. But we're taking what takes 6 weeks for review process down to minutes. And we see that capability of being then putting in the blockchain in the front end and the agency side, talking with the Googly platform that's deployed in the building side. And now we have the capability of making sure that the equipment that's there and spec'd out is there, these systems are functioning, and at any point, if they're down, someone's going to know about it with an escalation path.
Well, in Fort Lauderdale, when you spoke on that panel, by the way, people can go and see it. I assume on your piece was on your LinkedIn post today that I commented on, but also on our website at CDIA USA, which it will take you to our YouTube channel, YouTube/CDIA USA, and you can watch what Dan had to say at our conference. But I can't imagine a better scenario where the guys from the radio shop in Fort Lauderdale were jumping all over you to find out about this. I thought that was really interesting. You've got sort of 3 points of interest that I think really focus on what Googly's doing and how things are shaping for you right now. You want to go through those 3 points real quick, Dan?
Yeah, I mentioned one of those with the software at the front end for the permitting blockchain and the AI. We're obviously going to the edge with trying to get that recognition on the network and the health of those networks at the edge. And then the other side is removing that risk of awareness to these properties. If we can connect all of this together and give the tools to these jurisdictions, but also the properties, that's where we see this gaining momentum. But those are the three aspects we're touching. But in reality, our technology isn't blocking anybody out of the ecosystem. We're giving this tool to the licensee and the jurisdiction. We're giving this tool to the contractor for the maintenance efficiencies, which the Motorola did comment on that, hey, this is a pretty neat maintenance efficiency side, which all of us that were in the integrator world at one point or still are, that's the biggest headache is our schedule. And then the third is just removing that risk out of the property that they don't know exists. And so we're doing a lot of messaging when it comes to that to make sure that there's some awareness there, but that's also the reason of why we should put a little more horsepower behind this thought.
Gotcha. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here, Dan, and I'm just, as I said, I'm amazed at how much you've established here in a very short period of time. I know you're really on the move and you've got a lot going on, but I think you really said it well here. How can people find you when they want to get more information about this? Because we've got a large reach in the real estate space, in the public safety space, and in the enterprise space. How can people find you?
Go to our website at googly.com, Gugli, and just for everybody that's listening, that comes from Guglielmo Marconi. He's the inventor of RF out of Italy, so that's where our name comes from. But go to our website, and then you can inquire right there. That will come to one of our people that can look at it and get back with more information with this. it's an opportunity I think that people should really look at. We're getting a lot of traction in the market, and it's something that I think is very forward thinking that's never been done in this space. Everybody's been trying to correct the code that's been written last year. Everybody's trying to translate that code and then push it. But there's never been a lot of fixes. And if you look at the networks, they're fragmented. You got Indiana that's trying to block the public safety side because of the noise. And so, yeah, reach out to us. Let's talk about your enterprise side. But there's definitely some opportunity here where I think it makes sense. And for once, we'll save some money to the property versus add more to the bottom line.
I would say that you've got a lot of traction is kind of an understatement, but I'm thrilled for you. And I can't wait to see you again in September in Las Vegas at our event. And Dan will be there and in force with his team. And I can't wait to talk more about this because you've got a lot going on and it's an important and interesting aspect of our industry. I've been talking today with Dan Leaf from Googly. And Dan, I'm so glad you told us where the name Googly came from too. That was a question I was going to ask you and I forgot.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
reach out to Dan at googly.com. And thank you for watching. Rich Berliner here with CDIA. We'll see you in Las Vegas on September 1st. Be there. After all, it's Vegas. And thanks again, Dan. I appreciate you being on with me today.
Thanks, Rich. It's a pleasure.